Hello everyone, I welcome you all to StudyIQ. My name is Prashant Dhawan and in this video we are going to talk about a lot of important topics. First, there will be an analysis of Iranian president's recent visit to India, what happened there regarding Chabahar, we shall discuss all that. Later on we will also discuss all these important things, the importance of India-Iran relations, the role of Pakistan in India-Iran ties, the role of USA in India-Iran ties, and finally what are the future prospects for the partnership between these two countries. And StudyIQ's pen drive and tablet courses are available for various exams like SSC, Bank, RBI Grade B, SSC CGL. We even have test series for SSC candidates, CGL, CHSL, and UPSC test series is also available on StudyIQ.com. You will find courses for various exams on StudyIQ.com, so visit this website. You will find demo lectures available here as well. You can also call these numbers for more information. So recently in the February month of 2018, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani concluded his bilateral visit to India and it was concluded on a successful note. A lot of MOUs were signed and overall it was a very successful visit. But before we start talking about Indo-Iran relations and what the visit was all about, what were the MOUs about, let's just get to know a little bit about Iran and its geography. So let's have a look at the map. This is our lovely country India, and near India you will find Iran. Iran is surrounded by a lot of countries. It shares its borders with quite a number of countries like Iraq, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. I will tell you the entire list of countries in a few minutes, but just understand where it is located. Also, just observe this very beautiful fact. Clearly you can see that Afghanistan and Pakistan share border with Iran. There was a time in history when India shared a border with Iran as well, where of course at that time the India that we now know, it didn't even exist. We are talking about the era before independence when Pakistan, Bangladesh and India, all these countries were a single country under the British rule. Of course, at that time India had a border with Iran. If we go back in history, of course, we can see that many great kings like King Ashoka, who ruled pretty much the entire northern India and parts of central and southern India as well, they probably had an empire that shared its borders with the Iranian empire as well, the Persian empire rather I should say. Now have a look at Iran's geographical position. It is positioned between east and west, isn't it? And you will also see it is very near Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea itself is landlocked. Landlocked means that it does not have access to the 5 large oceans of the world. So suppose if you have a boat and you are in the middle of the Caspian Sea and I ask you to row all the way to the Indian Ocean, you will simply not be able to do that because there is a lot of land surrounding Caspian Sea. You cannot enter the Mediterranean Sea from the Caspian Sea. So it is landlocked. And you can see a lot of landlocked countries here like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Iran provides a lot of connectivity for all these Central Asian countries to the Indian Ocean, and they are very much dependent on Iran for their trade routes. Now of course India too is banking on Iran for spreading its trade routes all over Central Asia and Europe through the Chabahar port. More on that later, but for the time being just understand the geographical position of Iran. So Iran is the 17th largest country in the world. The largest of course is the Russian Federation. Iran shares its borders with Iraq, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan and Pakistan. The currency in Iran is Riyal. Iran over the years has given a lot to the world. It has given a lot of theories, a lot of great thinkers, a lot of ideas to the entire world. If I make a video on Iran's contribution to the entire world, it will probably be a 1-hour lecture. But for the time being, let's talk about some people that are very famous, like Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. He was a Persian mathematician. You guys know that the people of Iran are basically Persians, right? The entire region was called Persia once. So this gentleman here, Muhammad bin Musa, he invented modern day algebra. This was Iran's contribution to the world. Then there was also Ibn Sina. He was a Persian polymath. He is often called the father of modern medicine. He wrote 2 important books. You should remember this for prelims point of view. The first book is the Book of Healing and the second one is the Canon of Medicine. Usually the perception in the entire world is that the West came up with the modern medicine system, but Iranians were quite advanced. They knew a lot about medicine, and you can clearly see Ibn Sina even wrote two books, and these two books were used by doctors around the world for centuries before, of course, new books came along. The reason I'm telling you all this is because you guys need to understand that over the years, many Iranian thinkers, they spread their ideas in India, and vice versa. Many Indian ideas spread in Iran as well. And this is what Iran's president recently said in his visit to India. This is his quote. He said, the relations between the two countries, of course, he is talking about Iran and India here. The relations between two countries goes beyond trade and business. We aren't just two countries that are having good trade relations and we are doing good business. It is much beyond that. It goes back in history. We share cultural, historical relations with the two countries. Our and yours artists, engineers, mathematicians, and various thinkers, they crossed borders, they had relations. And this goes back in history and it is still kept intact. And this will, of course, help blossom the friendship between India and Iran. So this is something that all of us should be aware of. Iran was our neighbor at one point and we had very close relations with the Persians. Now, if we start discussing how Indians and Iranians worked together over the years, we will probably end up reading thousands of books on this issue. The collaboration is quite old and deep. But let's just talk about this very important person, Ustad Ahmad Lahori. Ustad Ahmad Lahori, the architect of Taj Mahal, one of the 7 wonders of the world. He was an Iranian. So now you can understand how thoughts freely flowed from Iran to India. People came and, they shared their ideas, they learned new things, and this has been going on for centuries now. Now let's talk about India and Iran relations. Well, independent India and Iran established diplomatic relations in 1950, right after India achieved its independence and it was on its way to construct its own constitution. And of course, Mohammad Mosaddegh, we need to talk about this person. He was the Prime Minister of Iran for a very brief period between 1952 to 1953. He was a very important person during that era, and he is still regarded by a lot of Iranians as one of the finest politicians the country ever created. His contribution wasn't all that great being the Prime Minister, but being a leader of the masses, what he did was he took the control of Iranian oil away from the British and nationalized Iranian oil, which was a huge achievement by him. Now, interestingly, he was also a huge admirer of the father of our nation, the father of India, Mahatma Gandhi ji. And you will see many Iranian websites like this one. This is a cutout from an Iranian website. And you will see many Iranian websites where they glorify Mahatma Gandhi ji and Mosaddegh. And they even have many articles where they talk about how both the leaders had similar ideology. Well, Mosaddegh really admired the way Gandhi managed to tackle the British. He made them dance to his own tunes. Well, perhaps that's not the proper idiom, but he pretty much stuck to his stance, and the British oftentimes had to change their stance to facilitate Mahatma Gandhi. That this was the power of truth and justice that the father of our nation wielded. And of course, Mosaddegh was a huge admirer of that. There is a very famous quote by Mosaddegh as well. So this was the quote. He once said about the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi was a rare human being with miraculous technique, brought up India to the heights on which she stands today. In Gandhiji's dictionary, religious difference and sectarian prejudices had no place whatsoever. Very secular person. In fact, he was the greatest supporter of Indian Muslims. Gandhiji not only stabilized the greatness of his country in his own lifetime, but also left behind men like Jawaharlal Nehru, who finished the product of Gandhi school. So obviously a great admirer of Gandhi, and he also wanted India and Iran to have great relations. Unfortunately, Mosaddegh was not going to be Iran's Prime Minister for a very long time, and suddenly after he went away, India-Iran relations, they spiraled downwards. Then starts the Cold War era. After Mosaddegh was overthrown by US and the Western countries in a coup, it was a staged coup in Iran, and they overthrew him, and people who were pro-Western, pro-USA, they were planted in Iran. After that, after a few years, Shah of Iran, he suddenly came to power. So Shah Muhammad Reza, he was now the ruler of Iran, and Shah didn't like Indian Prime Minister Nehru's friendship with fellow NAM founder President Gamal Abdel Nasser. At that time, Iran and Egypt were at odds with each other, and definitely Shah of Iran did not like India's good relations with the country of Egypt. Of course, there were some other factors involved here as well. Since it was the Cold War era, India was near USSR's sphere, and Iran was obviously at that time under Shah of Iran. It was a very pro-USA country, and it was trying to westernize itself to a large extent. So this was a very bad time for India-Iran relations because, of course, Shah did not like India's foreign policy, and overall the larger powers that were controlling the Shah, or the larger powers like US and the Western allies that planted Shah, even they wanted Iran to stay away from India because at that time India was pretty much on the other side of the pole. If all this wasn't bad enough for India-Iran relations, then came the era of Iran-Pakistan cooperation. These were difficult times for India. India wanted to be a part of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. It is a very important group of Islamic countries around the world. And of course, India would probably not be given complete membership, but at least India could have been an observer member of this organization. Russia, as you probably know, is an observer member of OIC, and so is Thailand. Now, these two countries obviously have a much lower population of Muslims compared to India. India rightfully deserves a place in this organization, and in 1969 it tried to actually enter this organization, but it was blocked by Pakistan. Pakistan opposed India because, well, obviously there has been a rivalry for a very long time now. Other than that, they also believed that because of all the things that are happening in Kashmir, Kashmir is an unresolved issue, so they blocked India's entry. Now, at that time, Pakistan was not enough to block India's entry. They needed support, and that support came from a pro-Western, pro-USA Iran. So these two countries blocked India's entry, and of course now things have changed a lot. In 2018, India doesn't really need OIC all that much, not because India doesn't really think it is important enough, but since there is so much rift between Muslim nations, so OIC itself isn't exactly a very powerful organization. But at that time, just remember this, that India was blocked in a very important group by Pakistan. Then after a very long time comes the era after Cold War. The USSR was no more. The world was quite different. USA was the sole superpower now, since USSR had disintegrated, and India realized that now it needs better relations with Iran. So Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, a very visionary leader indeed, he visited Iran in 1993, and he tried to make sure that both the countries have stronger ties together. And this relationship resulted in a lot of benefits for India. For example, after Narasimha Rao's visit in 1993, next year in 1994, in United Nations Human Rights Council, Pakistan presented a resolution. A resolution that was against India. The resolution was about Kashmir, about how people are being mistreated in Kashmir, and Pakistan's agenda there was to sort of defame India in the international arena. Now at that time, India needed people to vote against this resolution, because if such a resolution passed in the Human Rights Council of UN, it would obviously be a huge diplomatic blow for India. At that time, Iran, whose vote was quite decisive in the counting, it voted in favor of India and voted against Pakistan. So at that time, you can say Iran sort of betrayed Pakistan, you can say. I don't think we can use the word betrayed, since both of them never really had much of a partnership together. So Pakistan was left in the lurk, and Iran decided to go ahead with its partnership with India. So since 1993, Iran and India continuously tried to improve their relations. India also knew that if India wants to expand its trade routes to Central Asia, Russia and Europe, then Iran will be very important in that dream project. And that's why in the year 2001 or the year 2000, both the governments started talking about the North-South Corridor. And of course, the Chabahar Port. Now, after that, in the year 2003, now this is a very different world now, because there's a huge difference between the year 2000 and 2003, because suddenly 9/11 has changed the entire dynamics of everything. Now the war on terror has begun. America is a much more aggressive nation. It has a lot of ill will towards Iran. Iran and USA have very bad relations. At that time, during this period of such turmoil, India made a very bold decision, and India invited Iran's president Mohammad Khatami to our Republic Day parade. He was the chief guest, the first Iranian chief guest in India's Republic Day parade, that too after 9/11, a very bold decision by India during that era. So after inviting Iran's president to our Republic Day parade, of course, Iranians started viewing India as a very brave country, a very pro-Iran country, a country that is willing to stand up against Western imperialism, or whatever they like to call it. So in the year 2005, it was a very good time for India-Iran relations. BBC did a World Service poll where they checked which country had a lot of positive influence in which country. So India had a lot of positive influence in Iran. 71% of Iranians viewed India positively. This was the highest rating that India got all around the world. So Iranians, they definitely saw India as a friend. But the next year, India was about to do something that would change their mind. Well, what happened was Iran was very aggressively developing its nuclear program, and it wanted to be a nuclear power, a nuclear weapon state, of course. And USA and the Western allies, they thought that Iran will destabilize the region, and they were against the Iranian nuclear program. They still are. So they presented a resolution in IAEA against Iran, and India was supposed to vote on this resolution. And to everyone's surprise, India voted against Iran, because it was expected that India will probably vote against the resolution. But since all the 6 major world powers, USA, Russia, China, Britain, France, Germany, all of them were voting against Iran, it probably was very difficult for India to resist that pressure. And India ended up voting against Iran here, and this became a huge issue in Iran. Even their diplomat openly in the media, he said that we helped India and in India's time of need, and now India has repaid us with this. And there were articles written about India's quote-unquote betrayal. So this was a phase in the India-Iran relationship as well. After what happened in IAEA in the year 2006, it actually took 2 full years for both the countries to get back together. Well, to be honest, Iran really did not have a lot of options to begin with. It was under Western sanctions. It needed closer ties with India. India was obviously going to be a huge economic giant in the future. Everyone could see that India will soon start growing at a very rapid pace, and it will probably catch up to China as well. So Iran wanted good relations with India. And in 2008, Iranian president visited India, and India assured Iran that it will not succumb to US pressure now. Now, of course, one thing that kept India-Iran relations floating is the fact that India kept on buying Iranian oil. Since Iran was under severe sanctions, it could not sell its oil in the international market. And India was willing to buy Iranian oil through various means. A lot of times payments were channeled through very dubious means as well. A lot of times barter system was used after a very long time. In barter system, Iran provided India oil, and in exchange, India provided some sort of a commodity like gold or wheat or something else. So for a very long time through barter system, Iran and India kept on trading. And even now, look, right now, as you probably know, in 2018 February, Hassan Rouhani, he visited India. When he visited India, he was quite desperate actually. He is under tremendous pressure. The government of Iran right now is under tremendous pressure because of a lot of reasons. Primarily because the people of Iran, the youth of Iran, they do not see a lot of good things happening in their country. They do not see their economy going forward. There aren't enough jobs for the young people. People are quite angry about the state of economy, and people judge governments like this. They have a very simple way of looking at things. they see that we have oil. All right, most of the countries in the world that have oil, they are happy. Why aren't we happy? Definitely there is something wrong with the government. Down with the government. So this is the logic usually that is used by the masses, and the Iranian public, they are quite angry with Hassan Rouhani. They think that he isn't doing enough, or he is corrupt in some way. So a lot of people in Iran, they want a second revolution. They want a complete transformation of the government. They want a pro-US, pro-Western Shah of Iran kind of leader. And of course, since these protests are now boiling, the Western nations are fueling these protests as well. They are funding the people there. I even made a video on Iran crisis, so you can check that out. It's in Hindi, but you'll get the gist. So right now, when Hassan Rouhani came to India, he came in the hope of investments. He hopes that USA will not put more sanctions on Iran, and India will invest billions of dollars in Iran for connectivity projects. Because as I told you earlier, for North-South Corridor, in order to connect the Indian cargo to the Central Asian countries and Russia and beyond, India desperately needs Iran, and Iran needs Indian money to build infrastructure, especially in their eastern region. You need to understand one thing. The Chabahar port isn't exactly some kind of a gift that Iran has given to India. Iran desperately wanted someone to develop that port. India came in and India filled that spot. Now, of course, India has made a lot of commitments about major projects, but as you know, when it comes to implementation, India is quite slow. Our companies are quite slow. So one thing that we can hope for is that India should obviously help Iran. It will pay dividends in the long run. But India should also complete all the projects quickly. So recently, when Iranian president visited India, a lot of MOUs were signed. The main one, of course, was the Chabahar Port one. So let's talk about the Chabahar Port MOU. The MOU on Chabahar Port gave India an access to the port for 18 months. Now you need to understand something. There isn't exactly one Chabahar port. Chabahar is a place. There are two ports in Chabahar. Alright. The first one is Shahid Kalantari. The second one is Shahid Behasti. Forgive me if I pronounced it in the wrong way. So these two are the important ports there. India leased this one, Shahid Behasti, from Iran for 18 months, and it is a very good thing for India. It is an asset indeed, and it will help us in a large extent, because India is now a member of the Ashgabat agreement as well. So India can take its cargo to Russia, Europe and beyond quite easily. So it is definitely a very good thing. One very important point you guys need to remember is that it isn't a deal between the Iranian government and the Indian government. It is actually a deal between two companies. From the Iranian side, it is Port and Maritime Organization, the PMO of Iran, and not the Prime Minister's office, of course. This is just a company. And of course, from the Indian side, it is India Ports Global Limited. So these two companies have signed the MOU, and now India Ports Global Limited has leased the Chabahar port for 18 months. Another major announcement was that India will invest in Iran in Indian rupees. Why is India doing that? Now, since USA still has a lot of differences with Iran, especially its nuclear program, and it is quite likely that Donald Trump might put more sanctions on Iran. This has been the US strategy for a very long time, and he might cancel the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama put forward as well. So in the view of these circumstances, India has opted to make all the investments in Indian rupees. India has done this only with two countries in the past, Bhutan and Nepal, and of course this gives Iran added security, because if sanctions are imposed on Iran, then it doesn't really have to trade in dollars. It can just exchange the Indian currency, and it is actually a good thing that India has done for Iran. To reciprocate this, Iran has extended the credit period for all payments from India. So this is quite good. Both the countries are helping each other out. And the two leaders, the leader of Iran and the leader of the Prime Minister of India, they also released a joint postage stamp depicting Deen Dayal port and the recent Chabahar port, to sort of show the world the connectivity between India and Iran. Then there was an MOU for passport. This is quite basic actually. Now diplomats from both the countries won't really require visa. Only diplomats, not normal people. Then both the countries will work on spreading and strengthening their traditional systems of medicine. India has Ayurveda. Iran too has their own traditional system of medicine. So both the countries will promote their respective traditional medicine systems in each other's countries, and research will be done as well. Other than that, of course, there is a MOU on double tax avoidance, so that no one can run away from tax by opening a company in the respective countries. So this is done in the view of helping both the countries out, both the governments out, and it is a very good thing. It was a very successful visit for indeed. So this is the end of our video. India-Iran 2018 visit by Iranian president, and it indeed was a very important visit. It was the first visit by this president in India, and let's see what the future holds for both the countries.